In many ways, NIL and the transfer portal have reshaped college football, but in many ways, things are still the same. Name, image, likeness impact on college football is largely overblown, and that pertains to Oregon, though there's no bad news on that front. The transfer portal, way more impactful. That all coming up today on Locked On Ducks. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, D1 play-by-play broadcaster, lifelong Oregon Ducks fan. Thank you for making this your first listen or your first view every single weekday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks every single weekday. If you have not already, please like and subscribe wherever you are listening to the show right now on the podcasting platform of your choice. We're free and available on all platforms. Or if you're watching on YouTube, thank you for doing that. One of the few people who have started to view me on the YouTube, as they say. That's not exactly what they say, but that's what we're saying today. Like and subscribe to the channel. If you want to leave a nice comment on Apple Podcasts or YouTube, that's always welcome and appreciated. And remember, if you want a question answered right here on the show by me for everyone to hear, tweet with the hashtag AskLODPod, or you can just DM me at Smalls_55 or at Locked On Ducks. Trifecta of ways to get on the show. As always, today's episode is brought to you by Run Your Pool. March Madness is here, and Run Your Pool has a better way to create your bracket. RunYourPool.com, the premier sports pool hosting service. We're using it here at the Locked On Network, which means you should too. That's RunYourPool.com. Okay, so I thought this was worthy of discussion today because it definitely is. NIL and the transfer portal have been blowing up everywhere you look. Oh my gosh, NIL and the transfer portal. Oh my gosh, everything is changing. Oh my goodness, it's all it's out of control. It is the wild, wild west out there. It's craziness. It's madness. You know, we have fallen down the rabbit hole and into the Mad Hatter's realm of madness. It is just absolutely crazy. Everyone take a deep breath. Inhale, exhale. Okay. Now we can have a reasonable conversation about NIL now that we've made fun of the, we'll just say, overblown nature of some of the coverage. And I get it. You know, it's interesting. It's new. There are things to consider that I will discuss on the show here today. But as it pertains to Oregon football, NIL, not the most impactful thing in the world. I mean, just in college football in general, right? Is you hear NIL in the transfer portal because they're taking off, because they have new rules, you hear them get kind of lumped in together. I don't think that's a really fair assessment when determining how big of an impact each is going to have when it comes to the ever-evolving landscape of college football and recruiting and how those sorts of things tie together, how coaches have to approach it. I don't think those are even in the same galaxy when it comes to impact. The reason there are several reasons. Let's start here. The big schools, right? A lot of people are saying now, oh, the big schools, they're going to be able to pay their top recruits. They're going to funnel in this money. They're going to pay their top recruits. All the big schools are going to do that. If you actually thought that wasn't happening at all before, welcome to reality, everybody. I don't know if you did or not. I'm just here to tell you that if you talk to anybody who is in the know, guys have been getting paid under the table for a long time. Wherever the money is coming from, doesn't really matter. The top guys, the big name recruits, a lot of them have been getting money. Not all of them. It's not all of them, but it's common knowledge. It's been a lot of it. You think Zion wasn't paid to go to Duke? There were kind of some allegations about it. You think it's out of the realm of possibility? How much attention, how much hype, how much winning did Zion bring to Duke University, which is still an elite program? And you know, you think offers weren't made or given to Jadeveon Clowney, Leonard Fournette, other top players over the years? Of course they were, right? And it was all under the table. Now it will all kind of be legal. And you know what? On a personal note, I'm okay with it. Guys making money in college. What do I care? It's not going to change college football as much as you think. That's sort of people's objection, generally speaking, right? Is I don't hear a lot of people saying, oh, these guys shouldn't be able to make money. They say, no, what about the impact it'll have on college football? NIL itself is going to have a reasonably minimal impact on the general layout of college football. Who's good? Who brings in the top recruiting classes? Who wins the national championship? Not that much is going to change. The number of guys who will actually get big money, the sorts of NIL deals that you hear about, is a very small number. It's a very small number, right? Because no company is going to come in and be willing to commit a certain number of dollars to a player to, endorse their product in a marketing campaign unless he or she is really popular, right? And you've seen things on Instagram, Barstool athletes, or this company is sponsoring so that's great, but an athlete who is at a school already established as a good player and then has a company come to him or her and say, we want you to endorse this product, that's not affecting recruiting. It's not. That player had to establish his or her pedigree to be able to put themselves in a position to get approached by the company to say, hey, we want you to endorse our product because you're fairly popular. More on NIL, and it's somewhat overblown nature, but it's not overblown? March Madness. Greatest sporting event on planet Earth. I will take that opinion to my grave. It's only a few weeks away. That means you need to start thinking now about where you're going to be running your brackets this year. Are you going for the usual, or are you going for the best? We've done our homework. We're running brackets with runyourpool.com. Along with standard brackets, Run Your Pool offers game types like Survivor or Pick X, both really fun in their own way. They have options to edit scoring. They offer more intel to make your picks, all stuff you won't find at ESPN or CBS. If you got a business, Run Your Pool can help you take some of that madness magic and play alongside your employees or even gain customers. Clearly, we believe in Run Your Pool at Locked On because, like I said, we're running brackets there ourselves. There's no truer test than that. If you want to play against us for a shot at a cash prize, join us at runyourpool.com/locked on. While you're there, create your own pool for your friends and family. Enter Pure Madness at checkout for $10 off your custom pool. All the rules and details will be available there. That's runyourpool.com/locked on for your chance to win a cash prize. We look forward to seeing and beating you there. No more appropriate promo code than Pure Madness. As I'm recording this, I was watching Wisconsin and Purdue earlier. Electric. I'm a big college basketball guy, as you probably know. All white out in the student section, electric atmosphere. Jason Benetti and Robbie Hummel on the call. Good tandem there from ESPN. Top 10 programs. Fantastic game. Jaden Ivey hit a big shot. Wisconsin hit a big shot. It was another bit. It was just absolutely phenomenal with the Big Ten regular season title on the line. So good time to get to runyourpool.com is right about now. So this NIL stuff, it's largely overblown. Not going to change a ton itself. Transfer portal a little bit more. We'll get to that later in the show. But what's the impact on Oregon, right? This is Locked On Ducks. So all of you are thinking, well, what about the impact on the Ducks? How is it going to affect Oregon? Should we, be worried? Should we be concerned? There's no bad news that can come from NIL being a part of college sports now for the Ducks. But it's not, like I said, majorly good news because it's just sort of a thing that's there. You'll hear about it from time to time, but overall, not going to have a huge material impact on game days or how rosters are put together. And, it is only good things for the Ducks because do you remember this guy? I think his name's Phil Knight. Yeah, he founded this company called Nike, formerly Blue Ribbon Sports with Bill Bowerman. He's worth over $52.3 billion, and he wants to win a national championship as much as you and I want to win a national championship, as we all know. I am being facetious here, of course. And that's good news for Oregon fans, right? Because it's only going to help raise Oregon's profile a little, or maybe attract a big recruit here or there, or, having that in the background could come into play every now and then. But NIL is all about branding power for the high-end guys who will make the headlines, right? That's the only way it could have a material impact is maybe this big-time top 5 recruit in the country is going to go to this school because he believes in the NIL deal. He's going to be able to get there, and he's going to go there instead of going to this other big-time school. That could happen, but again, that's not going to happen for a lot of guys because think about some of the biggest NIL deals you've heard about this offseason. Bryce Young was one of the first, and Caleb Williams is the most recent one going to USC. And they play for, hold on, let me double check my notes here. Oh, yes. They play for USC and Alabama. I mean, sure, you could come at it from the perspective of, oh, it's going to just exacerbate the big brands and they'll be able to do so much more. A lot of them probably were already doing this stuff under the table anyway. And, I'm not going to pretend to be totally peeved about that because, as I've said before, I want to focus on the Ducks and just how we as a program can be better and how we should feel about that as Oregon fans. But, a big part of NIL is stuff that we don't see, right? I don't see news about some big NIL deal for a guy at Washington State who got hired to do a local voiceover on the radio, or Ron McKinley, I think, did a voiceover for a local ad read on Eugene radio. Okay, that's that's what a lot of it is, right? And so what about a school like USC? Because they're in LA, they're going to have a big advantage. What about all the NIL deals? Again, who's going to give? What company is going to put money behind a future college athlete who they're not certain is going to be a star? None of them. If they're smart, sure, an unwise company might lose some money doing that, but the number of recruits who are in that discussion where you could make a pitch right out of high school, coach could go into a living room, be talking with a recruit and his family and say, oh, yeah, we think that, there's an NIL opportunity with this company here. You can't make that pitch to everybody because you aren't going to be able to deliver on that promise for everybody. Not everyone is a star in college football. A lot of players are just really, really good college football players, but that doesn't translate into having the sort of star power and notoriety that's necessary in order to get some of these big time NIL deals, right? It's only going to factor in for the highest of high end recruits, which is a tiny handful of guys each year. I mean, even really good players who have come out of the state of California for Oregon or anywhere, the Jaleels, Tucker and Florence, Justin Flo, Noah Sewell. Those are really good players, high end recruits. They're not getting an NIL deal immediately. Maybe one day, if they start to become stars in college football and they raise their profile, maybe somebody will come to them with an offer. That's possible. And that can be part of the recruiting pitch. But is that going to majorly sway a recruit's commitment? Is it going to majorly sway his decision of, I want to go to this school versus I want to go to that school? He's going to choose where he can get the best playing situation first, where he thinks he will succeed on the football field. I think that's what most of these guys are going to be able to do anyway, because if you succeed on the football field, then off-field stuff can come into play. And sure, it might be a factor you put into your mind on the back burner, but it's not going to be at the forefront of most recruits' decision making. Certainly not most of the guys that we will see play in Eugene on Saturdays in the fall. It's just not how that's going to be. So at the end of the day, it makes a school with name brand recognition, including schools like Oregon, by the way, or USC, Alabama, Clemson, Georgia. Sure, it makes them a little more appealing. But what exactly was unappealing to them before, right? If the argument with NIL that's cutting against it is, oh, well, Alabama's just going to be able to offer so much money to these guys. They're going to be so appealing. What wasn't appealing before about playing for the best coach in college football history and a chance to get yourself into NFL draft ready shape and win a national championship or two while you're in Tuscaloosa? What was unappealing about that before? Like, are you going to tell me that because some guys, not all guys, right? Most college athletes are going to have no NIL deals whatsoever. Is your argument, if you're saying that it's going to have a huge material impact on the way that business is done in college football, is your argument that a recruit who was kind of lukewarm on Bama before is suddenly going to see it as a huge opportunity to promote himself? No, because he has to be able to see the field. He has to be able to play, get attention, get media pieces written about him in the local paper. He has to be talked about on local radio. National media has to talk about him if you have a nationally televised game. All that has to play into those considerations, right? Kayvon Thibodeaux was number one recruit in the class of 2019, and he got a bunch of NIL stuff once it got once the rule got changed. But he'd become a star in college football, right? Not every number one recruit in the country becomes a household name. Kayvon Thibodeaux became that at Oregon because of his impact on the field, right? So the number of high school recruits that coaches can really go and talk to in person about an NIL deal and say, oh, you're going to be able to do this, and not just kind of be BSing them, is really, really small. I mean, the number of just college athletes who will have any sort of NIL deal in general is going to be like 1% or less. It's not going to be that many. So, yeah, there could be some small changes. Maybe a couple notable recruits will flip per year, but is it going to radically shift the landscape? No, Alabama was going to dominate recruiting, whether the NCAA passed this rule or not. Georgia was going to be able to get high-end defensive recruits because Kirby Smart is their head coach, and they're in the running for Arch Manning because they won a national championship, and Kirby Smart is their head coach. There are a million other things that are more impactful in the grand scheme of college football the name, image, and likeness. I think it's fine that it's there. I have no problem with college athletes being able to use their platform to make some money for themselves. I I don't care. That's fine. It's not going to impact Oregon in a huge way, one way or the other. It will only go positively. But is it going to, be a big boon for Dan Lanning and this new staff because they could offer NIL deals? No. What's going to be good for Dan Lanning and this staff is that they're able to recruit at a high level, that they're able to promote the Oregon brand as a winning culture. And by the way, driving around in Utah today, there was a car with Utah license plates, Oregon Classic O with the wings on the side, decal sticker on the back window of the car. That's the sort of stuff that sells a recruit more than the potential of, maybe making a few hundred or $1,000 depending on what the company offer is with a deal that may never materialize. That to me is far more appealing. I've never been recruited as an athlete before. I can't tell if you knew that just by looking at me on YouTube or by the fact that you're listening to me talk about sports. And I have never been a college athlete, but just to conclude here, I don't think there's any negatives for Oregon, but our recruiting profile doesn't drastically change with the introduction of NIL. What we were before is what Oregon is going to be able to get back to under this staff, NIL or no NIL. It's a net positive, but it's just not changing my view in a radical way, like at all. It just is not. The transfer portal is far more impactful. I'll get to why after I tell you that, this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. And with the ever increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why endure often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning? Is your Odyssey an LX or an EX? And, wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or car dealership? A hot Odyssey fuel pump, for example, is $353 from the chain store, $216 at Rock Auto. That is over $100, $137 for those of us math whizzes at home that you could spend on whatever you want, or maybe you want to invest. I don't know. But Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers and saving them money for over 20 years. Go to rockauto.com right now. See all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the car parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. This episode is also brought to you by Built Bar. It's the time of year where a lot of people, they've given up on their New Year's resolutions because it's March. It's the age of madness and you've given up. But Built Bar, it makes sticking to your New Year's resolutions when it comes to eating right really, really easy. Built Bar has got Puffs. Have you had a Puffs before? It's the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. Yes, you heard me correctly. Protein-infused marshmallow covered in 100% real chocolate, low calorie, high protein. Replace your candy bars with Built Bars. They are better. I've swapped out my granola bars in my golf bag for Built Bars because they've got the protein component. 17 grams of protein. I seriously have. Mint brownie. I am all in. There's a bunch of great flavors. Mint brownie is just my number one. They've got coconut almond, regular coconut, white chocolate cookies and cream. They've got a bunch of delicious more flavors as well. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, so the transfer portal is far more impactful than NIL because this freebie that the NCAA has given them, which again, I don't think is a terrible rule. Say you go to a school and the coach that you committed to play for leaves after one season. I won't name names if that's ever happened at the University of Oregon. We all know who I am referring to there. But if that happens, I think a guy should be able to go somewhere else and not have to sit out a year, because that's not a decision that he actually made. Like, I think it makes a lot of sense. And the schools that Oregon is going to be competing with for recruits, both in the transfer portal and at the high school level, I think it's interesting to look at how they've addressed the portal. And the biggest school, of course, USC, right? Lincoln Riley's there now. USC, assumably, is going to be back into the fold as a contender in the Pac-12. I think assumably is a word. I'm really not sure. Not an English major. But, they got Travis Dye, of course, and we remember Caleb Williams and Mario Williams, and they've gone into the transfer portal. That's reshaping your roster in a year, right? That's why I bring up these other teams and other players, because USC is going to be better than they were a season ago, in large part because they were able to hit the portal so hard. That's having a material impact on college football way more than NIL ever will. And sure, Caleb Williams is going to be able to get a bunch of money and make it off the field, but he was probably going to come to USC anyway, right? Let's say NIL had failed in the NCAA legislative body. Guess what? Lincoln Riley was still going to go to USC, and Caleb Williams was probably still going to follow him, because all that guy has done in college football as a head coach is churn out number 1 and second round draft picks who are starting in the NFL. So I think that was going to be a logical decision no matter what. Looking around the Pac-12 as well, Jaden Daniels in the portal, Jaden DeLora went in the portal, and the quarterback from Washington State goes down to Jed Fish at Arizona. Jaden Daniels is in the portal, which is kind of shocking and kind of not, because ASU's had some scandal stuff. They're under investigation right now. I understand wanting to get away from that. And there was a video, I don't know if you saw it, was posted online, where his teammates were not only not unhappy about Jaden Daniels leaving, they were kind of gleeful. And that's never a great sign when you see that. I'll be curious to see where Jaden Daniels ends up. He's a pretty talented guy, as Duck fans know. He squashed our college football playoff hopes with that 3rd and 16 pass. Don't have to go back down the rabbit hole there. But, say what you want about Bo Nix, at least we didn't see anything like what we saw for Jaden Daniels when he left his school. So I'm not saying that means he's going to be a great quarterback. I'm just saying it can always be worse, and that in perspective is good. But I was listening to Josh Pate the other day, Late Kick with Josh Pate, national college football guy, really, really smart guy. He gets it. Josh Pate gets it. I am a big, big fan. And he echoed what I have said before when it comes to the transfer portal in Oregon. He was talking about the Ducks because, hey, not talking about other schools on there, talking about the Ducks, national brand, big time. We love to see it. So he echoed what I've been feeling, which is Oregon really hasn't been hit super hard by the transfer portal, all things considered, this offseason, right? They've had several additions, Bo Nix and Sam Taimani, Christian Gonzalez, Jordan Riley, others, that we've seen come through. Chase Cota, of course, on that list now. But losing a backup defensive tackle, a starting corner who was a good player in DJ James, but wasn't all Pac-12 a season ago, a backup quarterback who had never played, a running back who already gave Oregon 4 highly productive seasons, and who left in conference, granted, but also went to one of the opponents Oregon won't play in the regular season this year. So that's a little bit of a perk. When that's what you're dealing with in terms of the transfer portal as you undergo a coaching change, it's not that bad. It's really not that bad. I'm not the only person who thinks that. And if you're an Oregon fan, that's how you should feel. Is, yep, there are some losses, and yep, a couple are disappointing. Would have loved to have seen Travis Dye come back because he was really good, and the running back room is suddenly kind of thin for the Ducks, and he was super productive and carried the workload and is just a really good all-around player. But he was in Eugene for 4 years, and new coaching staff, like I totally get it. I wish Travis Dye nothing but the best. He had a great career at Oregon. I loved watching him. I'll watch his highlights for a pretty long time, in all likelihood. But when those are the losses that you're dealing with, and that's kind of it, life isn't that bad. Staff was able, remember, they were able to keep Seven McGee around, and Sean Dollars was in the portal, and then he came back. So it could have been a lot worse in the portal that will have a much bigger impact on college football, and I would argue already is, than NIL ever will. And maybe stuff will calm down and guys will stabilize, but this, high level of movement, just kind of the norm. And that's okay. Oregon has to be able to adapt. You never want to be the team or the coach or the player who's rigid, stuck in your ways, not willing to adapt to the times, like it or not. Got to be able to just make it work. And I think Oregon and this staff are going to be able to do that. But biggest takeaway from today's episode, transfer portal, way more impactful than NIL, but everything can be good news for Ducks fans and the Oregon football team going forward. I appreciate everyone listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.